So, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Matthew Lee. I am the current president of PlayMU, and joining me today, live from California, is the CEO and president of Team Liquid, Steve. How you doing, Steve?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on and participating in this. I'm super excited. This is the kind of first time I've connected back with JMU, so I'm
Yeah,
excited for it.
this is
Yeah.
awesome. A quick thing before we get started, I wanted to first of all thank all of you guys in the chat and all you people watching the VOD for tuning in. I want to thank Steve for setting this up. I want to thank Vivian, who also helped set this up and did some preliminary conversations. And I also want to thank my friend Evan for making the post on Reddit that got this whole thing started. So thank you to all of you for making this all possible. And so I guess what we're first going to talk about is where Steve's going to introduce himself, talk a little bit about his experience at JMU and what he does at Team Liquid, and then we're going to get into some questions from PlayMU and from user submitted questions on our email. All right, so Steve, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much. So I'll start off a little bit of just background on myself. So I grew up in Leesburg, Virginia, which many of you probably know, being in Harrisonburg or studying in Harrisonburg. And I got into James Madison University. It was one of my top choices. I wanted to do in-state. Um, just learned that tuition is very different than it was when I was there, which was about $8,500 per year in state. Uh, but I went to James Madison University and I started there, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I figured I'd go into business because I was pretty entrepreneurial when I was in high school. I was the kind of kid that was charging for running small businesses on the side. What one of the ones that was kind of notable was this is back when there were MP3s and when we still had CDs and folks had to walk around with Walkmans. It was difficult to listen to two different artists, right? Because you'd have to take your CD, take it out of your Walkman, put it back in for your next, if you want to listen to 311 or Blind Melon or whatever it was. And I'm really aging myself.
Yeah,
I know,
nice
very
deep
boomer.
cuts.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'd go into these AOL chat rooms, and then we would pirate music. And this is was it LimeWire? I think
Yeah,
LimeWire before
LimeWire.
Napster. Yeah, before LimeWire, and I would get all these songs and burn them on CDs. Then I would go into the high school and I would sell them. I would have a whole binder of all the music, and people would buy CDs and then burn them so people could listen to all their music on one CD. It was a pretty good business,
Yeah,
actually.
really.
Um, so anyway, so I went to James Madison and I studied. I was a business major, so I spent most of my time at Zane Shoker, and it was business management with a focus on entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology, I think. And on the side, I also did a minor in creative writing. So got to see both sides of campus, essentially. Uh, and for me, I was a pretty like all in student. I was super try hard, um, and doing well in most of my classes. And um, I was doing marching band well before in all of high
Hmm.
school, but I was never good enough. So I tried out to be at the JMU's marching band, as most of you know, like one of the best in the world, our country.
Yeah,
So
we were in
yeah, I
the
didn't make it.
we were in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. It was crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I was never good enough, so I didn't make it. But yeah, I was kind of like I was a big band guy and marching band guy, and yeah, and I loved the business side of it. And then after I finished and I graduated, which I finished a semester early, surprisingly, kind of go getter mentality. I was like doing some of the summer classes in between each of the semesters, and yeah, and then I went into finance. I actually remember when I was studying, I told myself there's one area of business I don't want to go into. It's finance. I hate finance. and then, and then I remember doing all the career fairs after, because they would come on campus, and I was like interviewing with different places, um, and I just was like, you know what, my number one goal is I just want to make a lot of money. So I was kind of
There
super
you
sellout.
go. There you
But
go.
I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go into finance. So I went and worked at American Express as a financial advisor, and then um, all the while I've been playing video games. I played Civ and StarCraft and Warcraft, and all through college I was playing games, and I never was there was as far as I can remember, there wasn't a gaming club on campus. There wasn't like a PC gaming club. So I never really connected with other gamers while I was at JMU. All of my friends were kind of like all over the country, right? Because you play online. And then League of Legends came out, and I started my own team, and fast forward sponsorships, and kept building the business, and bootstrapped the entire thing. So a lot of the newer esports teams, they go out and find investors and get VC capital, private equity, or whatever it might be, and then they use that to fund the business and starting a new esports team. Well, for both Victor and I, who's co-CEO of Team Liquid, we just used the revenues that we were generating for the business and then reinvested them back into the company to grow it, paid ourselves basically next to nothing, and yeah, just kept growing and adding new players and teams and expanding. And then when Victor and I merged our companies, about it was a year later or 2 years later, we decided that we wanted to participate in the LCS, which was a $10 million franchise fee. And so we didn't have that kind of money. So we went and partnered up with Axiomatic, which is Peter Guber, who owns the Dodgers and the Golden State Warriors, and then Ted Leonsis with the Capitals and the Wizards. Some of you may know Ted Leonsis because he's in the DC metro area. and
Oh yeah, they know him personally. Like, just knock on his door.
Yeah, there you go. You know of him. Yeah. And and so we put that together, and they've been absolutely amazing board members and partners in the business. And so we capitalize the company, continue to invest into growth, and now are one of the largest esports teams in the world. And it's been an amazing ride so far. And being able to identify with other folks that love gaming and esports as much as I do, and work with those individuals to build a company. And it's probably the most proud moment I've ever had, is just, you find like-minded folks that all are centered around this mission of doing something in esports and gaming, and then you create something together. So it's been fantastic. It's been a great, I guess, 8 years now. And now thinking back, I'm on the JMU subreddit, of course, read Reddit. And every now and again, I kind of see posts, and I remember seeing one, and I was like, you know what? It's probably time I connect back with my roots, and kind of give back. So I figured this would be a great opportunity to just chat with some of the folks that are current students, and just to answer questions, and be a resource, and kind of share aspects of my story, and hopefully help the future of yours.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we really appreciate you doing that, and we're really excited to start getting into that. We're gonna start. I have some questions for you, mostly about your story in collegiate esports, and then we have some questions that we got from our email. That's again askliquidsteve@gmail.com. If you want to keep submitting questions, please feel free. Steve said he's going to take time and make sure that he answers them off camera if we don't have enough time on camera. So, to get started, um, you were talking about how, you started Team Liquid and that you were looking to just get in there and just putting all the money back, like that you made from tournaments and sponsorships, back into the team. When was the sort of Scrooge McDuck bathing in the pool of money I made it moment? Like, when were you finally able to sort of take a step back from everything that you and your co-CEO did and just kind of appreciate the thing that you built?
Yeah. Um, I'd say the first moment where, from a financial perspective, there was a bit of relief, um, was when we did our partnership with Axiomatic. Um, Leading up to that moment, as you can probably imagine, like when you're running a company and you have employees and you're responsible for generating revenue, and that revenue is in part going to pay for them working for the company, and you're not sure if you're going to be making payroll, right? And your month or 2 months runway of cash, it creates a lot of stress. And being a college student, you can probably imagine it's very similar. Like, um, and I think during that point, there was just a lot of a lot of sacrifices. Like, I remember us all living in a gaming house together, and the times not even having my own bedroom. And you just wear so many different hats, and you're kind of stressed about the finances in order to create sustainability for the business. And yeah, I think it was that first moment where we did the partnership um, with Axiomatic, and that created some kind of financial relief, so that it wasn't a stressor, you know, and that helped because it allowed, like, a certain amount of mind share to be focused back into the business that wasn't just focused on surviving, right? Like, it's more, okay, now that there's all of this capital, how do we put it to use? How do we grow with it? And it's just a different mentality, right? Rather than like hunting and killing for every piece of revenue in order to keep the business sustainable. So that was it. So, which would have been July 11th, 2016, which was my birthday.
Wow.
Surprisingly, the same
Wow,
day.
wow, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, what an awesome birthday present.
yeah,
Um,
it really was.
so going
Yeah.
back to your time at JMU, so sort of like I guess what question that I had was what is your favorite memory from the time that you had at JMU, and why does it involve Duke Dog?
Yeah. Uh, Favorite memory. Um, oh my gosh. There was this one class that and for anybody that's watching that is also a College of Business major, um, you probably are familiar with a class that it was a shoe selling business, and you had to sell as many shoes as you could, and you were competitive with like other classes that were going simultaneously, even though you weren't in the same actual class. There was like 13 of them running alongside each other or whatever. And what you had to do is you had to put all these inputs into the file of like what you're going to price your shoes at, what geography you were going to sell in, what were your different marketing strategies and cost point, like, and then you would submit a diskette. It's like a 3x5 like thing into the professor, and then I don't know how he put them all into some sort of system, and then out would spit like what company was gaining market share and generating revenue and all this kind of stuff. And you were competing with everybody else that was doing the program, and I loved it because for me it was like a game. I was like, okay, I'm going here, I'm getting all the variables, I'm studying all the reports, and I'm putting it in. And I remember there was this one moment where this is like maybe 4 weeks or 5 weeks into the project, and the professor, I can't remember his name, came into the class and he goes, okay, well, so I have to say, in all the years that I've been doing this, this has never happened. And everybody's like, oh no, what happened? Like, somebody get in trouble? Like, what? And he's like, so all the teams but one have been are bankrupted. And it's all because of one team, which at the name we called it Holla, which is kind of obnoxious. Holla, the song. And that was the team that I was running. So I basically bankrupted all the other teams that were in all these other project teams because I was so good at it and I was having so much fun. So I don't know, that was like a moment that stood out to me because it was like I was able to use like my gaming love for gaming and tie it into like a PC thing and then also business. So it was a lot of fun. But no good memories with Duke Dog.
Aw.
Nothing that comes to mind, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, you've heard it here first. To get successful, you need to play a lot of video games, burn CDs and sell them to your friends in high school, and then bankrupt every other shoe company in college.
There you
That's
go.
how you got to do it.
You're on
Those
a path.
three steps. Three steps. Um,
Important milestones.
talking about steps, I want to transition into talking about the sort of established collegiate path that has sort of come out of the woodwork in the past couple of years. Organizations like Blizzard's TESPA and Riot Games' is like League of Legends program have all sort of sprung up, encouraging college students to participate in on and off campus tournaments and leagues for just a whole bunch of games. Do you, as a team owner and with your like coaches and scouts, look at these programs to like scout for players and other people in management positions?
I would say on the player side, not so much. Um, Most of the scouting that we do for like pro players that we would sign to Team Liquid are coming from leaderboards or in-game ranking systems, and sometimes when there's not a ranking system, some sort of op.gg or analogous third-party site that is running analytics of all of the IGNs in a particular game on a certain server. So that's where we typically look, and from that we're able to identify folks that may be standouts in terms of their in-game stats, and then it's literally a matter of reaching out to them and finding out who they are. What do they? Who are you? Are you a Smurf?
Yeah.
What are you interested in playing? And so there's that, and then some of it too is just like by referral. Most of these pro game communities at the very top, you get to know each other, right?
hmm
And it's very word of mouth. And okay, this person is pretty good. Like maybe you should go talk to that. I don't know who that is, but they just started and they're doing really well. They impress me consistently in a certain amount of games. So we ask kind of our current roster what they think in each of those different respective games. And of course, each game has like different competitive ecosystem, but generally speaking, that's what we look for. In terms of management and staffing, we do look at, we don't yet do as much, I'm speaking on behalf of Team Liquid,
hmm
outbound research into these communities to do recruiting, partly because we're still a small organization that does not have the in-house resources to be so proactive at identifying folks that are super talented to come work at Team Liquid. Unfortunately, a lot of it is more reactive on folks that are applying to certain positions, and we're reviewing those inquiries and submissions and reaching out and having conversations. So while I would love to look at these areas and identify folks that may be interested in working at TL, it's just a limited we have a limited bandwidth currently based on the size of our HR team.
hmm That makes sense. So going off of that, is there anything you want to see from these collegiate esports, like collectives, like gaming clubs? Like, is there anything you want to see from those to contribute to the overall pro scene, the overall esports community?
Yeah, I think one thing that I think is happening at the collegiate level for a lot of this is just a focus on the esports ecosystem rather than just the lens of being a competitive player, and what opportunities those bring to bear for careers in esports, whether they exist at the developer level or team or player or agency or streaming or platform or content or distribution or media rights or tournament organizers or uh, uh, all of that, right? Like that, there are folks that are figuring out how it works within esports for those specific industries and gaining experience to then make radical changes in the future trajectory of our industry. I think that there's just so much progress to be made, um, that does not currently exist. There's a lack of infrastructure, lack of direction, even some things that could be just copied from other professional sports that have not yet transpired into affecting esports. I I think we're still very young in that regard, and that creates a lot of opportunity for really passionate individuals that want to come in and make change and have that particular sector or aspect of the industry improved from where it is currently today to what it could be. And we need more leaders that are going to pursue that. A great example of that. Some of you may know Mobalytics. Mobalytics is a platform, so third party kind of coaching platform that plugs into the API with Riot Games, I think a couple other developers, and it provides in-game statistics and coaching advice and kind of analytics. And that company was founded by an individual that worked in at the Mayo Clinic, was doing physiological and psychological research associated with the performance of other professional industries, and but was a gamer, and then just wanted to come in and say, look, there's a better way to do this. I want to take everything that I've learned in being a doctor and working at the Mayo Clinic and doing these things in terms of research, and I want to apply it and make the average Joe be a potential pro, right? And make them better. It should be easier. And was able to come in, and I think has one of the most successful platforms now. I know for TFT because I use it all the time, and even League of Legends because I'm too lazy to import my runes and stuff, which is really nice. Yeah, so I think if there's one thing that I was, yes, long-winded way of answering your question, it's like identifying an area that needs to be improved in our community and our ecosystem, and coming in and just doing it, right, irrespective of being a pro player or not.
Right. Do you think schools need to take up a little bit of a larger role in terms of collegiate esports? Like, what I mean by that is, do we need more UC Irvines where they're building arenas where people can play esports on campus? Or do we just need schools to say, hey, we have an esports program, you should come here and play esports with us? Or is it somewhere in between those two?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for like-minded individuals that share a common interest. If there's a collective of those individuals all together at a university or college, for them to come together and do something that's impactful to future students, I think is great. Um, it's hard to have a broad sweeping brush for every college or university. Some may not have as many gamers as other colleges and universities, but when there is a community, a group of individuals that want that, and they want to affect the future of the future grad or the future students that will come in to have a better experience, then I think that's great. If that means better computer labs or specialized arenas, which is maybe a place where you can play and also watch. I think those things are great. Invest in them based on the size of that respective community. I mean, you don't want to build a massive arena and not have enough folks to go in and
Yeah,
enjoy it.
exactly.
Uh, at the same time, too, I think it's important to not be disingenuous with your initiatives in esports as a college. I think that it should be about the community and giving back to those individuals rather than using it as a recruiting technique, without much substance. I'm not pointing to any kind of specific colleges or universities, but I know that it means a lot to be authentic to it, right? And
Hmm.
so uh, on that scale, I would say that it varies based on the size of that community and what it means to build infrastructure to make it a really enjoyable experience for the students that want to be involved.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you definitely need to it just like what I've heard from my friends in law school is it depends.
Hmm.
About what your university is, what your community is, and just what the whole vibe at the school is. I think that's definitely fair. One thing that I talked about when I had my when I was talking with Vivian about setting up this meeting with you was personal branding and team branding, which is Vivian told me about. Do you have a decent time managing both like branding for yourself as Liquid Steve and also separating the Liquid part from your name and branding for Team Liquid? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah. I would say that the priority is always on the organization, right? It's um, what is the voice of Team Liquid? What is the brand of Team Liquid? What are the values associated with Team Liquid? And how do we rally around that as an organization? And then I think how, as a leader, one of the two leaders of this organization at this CEO level, how do we exemplify those in our own personal brands? Um, for me, the way I think about it is like my personal brand is just it's like a byproduct of just being involved in the space, right? And as the organization has grown, I also have I feel like when my personal brand speaks, it's also speaking as an extension of Team Liquid, right? Like they're almost one and the same,
Hmm.
but there are certain things where it's important to speak in a personal tone versus from an organizational tone. And in those cases, it's better to have a one-on-one, right? And when there's like a conversation that may be required, uh, versus something that is branded as the company. So it just kind of depends on the topic and when it's appropriate to have it come from the company voice or my own personal brand, I guess, or my own personal voice. Uh, but for me, my personal brand, if I had to say there's some sort of distinction, is just the bio on my Twitter, which is just get shit done, uh, have values and think big. So uh, keep to those three things. I think you're in a pretty good spot.
All right, fair enough. Going back to keeping values and getting shit done, how has Team Liquid gotten shit done during this whole stay-at-home global pandemic? I know LCS at the very least has transitioned to streaming matches and having people just sort of like up in the air. How have you guys been adjusting to that? How's that been going for you?
Yeah. So I think we've done not to pat ourselves on the back, but I think we have done an excellent job of adapting to the new environment. One of the first things that we did was we needed to ensure that there was a communication strategy to all of the staff at Team Liquid, all of the stakeholders, our investors, and our partners that support our business. And so within each of those, it's a pretty robust communication and action plan in order to put health first and foremost as the most important thing. And then how do we continue to do the things that we do from a work perspective around that, and we've done a pretty good job. So on some of the staffing stuff, like we made sure we were following all the guidelines, both by the federal and state level, and we just I think it was this last week opened back up the alien retraining facility for the players and a handful of other individuals. So we've got like this phase plan for reopening, and luckily, because we're a tech company and very, a gaming company, we were able to do a lot from home, right? So there's a lot of individuals that were able to be as if not more productive from working from home, and ensuring that each of them had the support of the company in order to help them with whatever setup they may improvements to the setup that they may need. So whether it's hardware, um, more space or whatever it might be, we were there to like help out to make sure that those areas were really productive and comfortable for our staff members. And from a industry perspective, I think we're super fortunate to be in a space that allows for the content to be created from home. Right, we're still competing in regional tournaments and leagues. We could be far worse off. So for that, we're very fortunate, and we also need to figure out how to continue to create content, and that's been an area of focus for us. Is on the content side. In all of the 17 different games that we're in, how do we continue to create content without being in person? And I think it's pushing to like almost a paradigm shift in the way people think about the type of content they consume, and um, uh, it's definitely, I think, creating a big opportunity for the next generation when it comes to content marketing, licensing, media rights, all of that stuff. I think we're going to be in a new era of all of that. It's been fast tracked because of the pandemic.
Yeah, awesome. From what I've seen, just the entire online presence of Team Liquid, I'd agree that you're definitely doing a great job at what's going on so far. And speaking to what you briefly mentioned, which is that Team Liquid facilitates 17 different games. How do you, and I know multiple orgs do this because you can't just be League of Legends org or like Call of Duty org. How do you manage like supporting 17 different types of players in your organization and all of the like coaching and like the extra baggage that comes with that?
Yep. So the short answer is amazing people, very talented, and yeah. So we're just super fortunate to have some just really smart, talented folks within each of these different games and communities that provide expertise for us to make good decisions. And I think at the basis, it's a lot of that. And how do we get involved? And uh, at the ethos of Team Liquid is giving back and being part of the community. And when we have a reason to be there. And so part of that is identifying what's needed, and then how do we participate in that by providing some sort of solution. So if we're going to get involved in, let's say, Valorant, for example, how do we contribute to the Valorant ecosystem in a meaningful way beyond just having a team, right? And so for us, it's by having competitive events when they're not available, right? Having a Discord that I think's got like, I don't know, 50,000 people in it or something like that, to help provide advice and coaching and community to talk about the game, and to have a website and proams and all kinds of stuff, right? So by providing that need where it's not currently being supported by the developer, says, hey, we're here to be part of the Valorant community, right? And so within that comes, I think, a level of respect for players that play Valorant. And then you kind of have that same model for each of the different games that we're in, and and then just aligning ourselves with folks that can make decisions as an extension of Team Liquid for us to compete and create content in each of those different games. And we try to balance how we invest into new game titles. So like if a new game is coming out, we want to get a feel of, do we think it's going to be successful? Is it going to be an esport? Is it going to be more content? How much should we invest in that particular game? When do we might want to scale that? How often are we meeting to determine like trajectory of certain game titles? And that's just part of having your ear to the ground and being a gamer and know what's going on. So
Yeah, definitely. And then going off of that talk about support system, I know definitely with the rise of social media and the entire age of the internet, mental health has become a forefront issue in sports, let alone esports. Uh, do you feel that Team Liquid facilitates that sort of openness? And is that something in the sort of get shit done mentality of both you and Team Liquid? Is that something that you guys prioritize? Having a good mental health support system?
yeah, 100%. I think that mental health is so important, and we were always limited by the types of resources that we would have, like financial resources,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to provide support to our players. When we capitalized the organization, one of the first changes that we made was figuring out a partnership for having a facility. And the reason for that was because the mental health degradation that was happening by having all the players live and work in the same house was significant. And it was having a really bad effect on just day-to-day life, right? Like happiness um, and ability to focus and compete and to be a good athlete. So one, we made a huge investment into having a facility with the support of Alienware, and next one is just coaching and kind of sports psychology. So we have had a lead mental coach that's been working with the team, and not like one of these, you know, I guess less qualified mental coaches, but someone that really, really knows their stuff, that is put in thousands of hours of training and has appropriate degrees and stuff, that has worked with our players in almost like a counseling fashion to uh, uh, to just talk, and be there in terms of support. And then we also invest a lot into the staff side, so coaches, managers, analysts, assistant coaches, sports psychologists, all of that, so that players feel really supported, so that they have the time uh, to balance and focus on their mental health. And then in terms of other resources, our HR team has put together a lot of other external vendors and partnerships that we have in place for staff and some of our not only player staff but our core staff plus the players as well. So we've kind of went all in terms of the resources that we provide to put mental health at the as an important thing. We follow through with what I just said, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, I think what we've been talking about a decent amount for the past like 40 minutes is there's a lot that goes into an esports organization, whether that's coaching, sports psychologist, the 17 different games that you have, those players, the streamers that you guys have on your team that aren't playing for professional esports. There's a lot that goes into an esports organization. And so, one of the things I wanted to really get into was what's your day to day like? What is it like talking to all different aspects as an owner of Team Liquid, all different aspects of the sort of machine that you guys have?
Yeah. Day to day, it's definitely evolved, right? So
Hmm.
going back to living and being in a gaming house and probably wearing more of a hat of a manager and a coach and maybe a sales guy and marketer has continued to evolve. And so my day to day has grown with the business. Uh, I would say that today there's a lot of strategy, which I love. I really get into that. So it's just thinking about the future, right, and planning for the future with other leaders that are in with team within Team Liquid. Like, where do we think the esports ecosystem is going to be with regards to media rights in the next couple of years? What is it going to look like from a branding perspective? What is it going to look like from an apparel and clothing and trademark and in-game item perspective? And from those kind of key strategic conversations, figuring out how do we align resources and invest our time and capital in the right areas so that we can grow with those market changes. So there's a good amount of strategy. I would say there's a lot of management. Having calls with folks and just being a mentor and providing advice and helping them come to good decisions. And I would say another big piece is a lot of writing, a lot of emails. I would say this is just so, I guess it kind of goes without saying, but like I didn't realize how much I would be writing. Like when I was in college, it just didn't. I was always thinking like, okay, well, I've got to like do this research paper, or do this, or this, or this, but it didn't feel like, okay, well, writing is going to be such a big part of what I do every single day, and it is. And I would say, sometimes it will take me like 4 days to write one email, right? Because I want it to be thoughtful and organized and have links and be a research paper. That's kind of what it is. It's literally like annotations and links and all this stuff and like how to construct a point and convey that. And it's it's like I feel like sometimes I'm writing a research paper, or sometimes it's like negotiation or persuasion, or it's case study stuff. It's writing has been a big part. So lots of writing and organizing thoughts, and then gaming for sure. So still play a lot of League of Legends and a handful of other games.
Yeah,
So.
awesome. All right, so I think it's just about time that we move on to the email questions that we got. And again, Steve is going to be answering anything that he doesn't see on the stream over at the email. So if you have any questions, please, that's askliquidsteve@gmail.com. Our first question comes from Evan. It says, first off, a huge TL friend since the Curse days. How did you plan and work around the possibility of losing fans with a Doublelift departure? Thank you, and hashtag TLWin.
Oh, thanks for the question. I will say that the changes that we made with Peter and Tactical in this off season were some of the most anxiety-inducing decisions that I've made, and I think when you're in sports and you're not sure if something is going to pan out, right? And we still don't know if it's going to pan out, right? But we hope it does. At least it did the first week. And you're like, okay, well, Peter is one of the most notable players in the entire league. Wow. That provides a lot of value to our partners and our sponsors, which we rely on for running the business. That's a pretty big deal, right? What about competition and winning? How important is that? Would we ever sacrifice winning for something else, right? And you kind of go through all of this, and I felt like I was almost like a doctor coming into a patient, and I was just like running a bunch of tests and asking a bunch of questions and trying to find out what was going on and diagnosing, and then like having a prescription or a plan that would resolve whatever the illness was. Like that's how I approached it. And because I ran through this very methodical process that was so detailed, I felt like the conclusion is what the conclusion is, right? And it is going to be that. And I feel good about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
because I went through a really smart process, and when it came down to it, it was like winning is just everything, you know?
Yeah.
Like our commitment to winning is unwavering, even when it's super, super, super hard. And that was probably one of the hardest times where it was like, okay, well, uh, we just got to put winning first, and things will pan out. And so, yeah, so far so good, but we're still early in the summer split, so we'll
Yeah,
see.
and I think at the same time, a lot of that like doctor decision making comes in when you're adding players too. You know, when you're adding people like tactical, and even when you added double lift like a couple years back, you know, it's a lot of that decision making and seeing, well, will this help us put our first priority ahead, which is winning. You know?
Hmm. Yep, exactly. And it's like, there's no guarantee, right? Like there's no it's not so black and white. It's not so coin operated in that like you put the coin in and you expect the result. Like it's just
Hmm.
it's there's a lot of unknowns. There's so many factors and variables associated with like winning that it's hard to sometimes diagnose, well, what is the cause? Why is this happening? Like this is a symptom of maybe something else, and where do we focus our efforts in resolving these things? And so my approach was that, okay, well, it's definitely not just like an isolated problem
Hmm.
of our underperformance in the spring. We've got to look at what may be multiple issues, and that's why we also made the decision to move forward with Jat, which was like we need some leadership on the day to day,
Hmm.
and Josh has been incredible, like in bringing that. So that was like, you kind of put all these things together, and they hopefully work.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you for that question, Evan. The next actually refers to the aforementioned Jat. This is from John. What does Jat bring to TL that other coaches may have not?
I would say, I think Jat brings. Uh, I know I'm being repetitive here, but I think he brings a very thoughtful, like organized, non-emotional, almost scientific view of how to address issues, um, that aren't as nuanced as like things within the game, but focused on process. And I think he's great at that. So probably better than I've ever seen. So it's almost like you go in running a team and you're like, okay, if you go into it thinking there's going to be no problems, well, you're definitely wrong. You have to assume there's going to be, but it's how you address them and the process by which you use to address those issues that may come up, and the conclusions that then come from that good process. And I think Josh brings an impeccable process, and a non emotional way of approaching a problem to be able to diagnose it and run the right tests. And I think that commands a certain level of respect that, hey, maybe we don't know the answer, but let's figure it out together. And maybe the best way to figure that out is by doing this and this. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, well then let's do that and see, and then maybe change behavior or change a champion or change, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think he brings a great process.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I think it's definitely working so far. I think that the team looked great last weekend, and hopefully they'll continue to look great as the weeks go on. Let's look at a question here from Shady. Thank you, Shady. Is Team Liquid ever going to come out with new mouse pads? I've always been waiting on a TL mouse pad for a while now, and I'm always disappointed when I go to the TL store and I don't see them. Are you guys gonna add mouse pads or any other cool new merch to the store soon?
Yeah, I feel your pain, Shady. So, I'm in the same boat. Like I really would love for us to come out with one. I'll just say it's not easy. Like you think, it's just a mouse pad, but there's a lot of different types of mouse pads, and then by different games and all kind of stuff on how you use it. But I agree with you. I don't have an ETA for you, but I do know that our our team internally is very aware of this, and they are working on it. But I have nothing beyond that. Um, and then in terms of other cool stuff, we have invested a lot of time and effort as an organization into just researching apparel. And so I was thinking back like 7 years. Some of you may know or remember Steve Perino or Joka Steve. I remember when we were doing our Curse merch, he was in the garage, like shipping all the UPS labels for everybody that bought a Curse t-shirt. And I mean, we were literally just printing like, I wouldn't say iron on like logos onto cotton tees, but pretty close. Like it was pretty janky. So this has come a long way, and the apparel that we have now is it's top notch stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
it's hard because it's like you just see pictures of it and stuff, but like when you touch it, it's like super high quality and it feels good, and like the cut and the design and all that kind of stuff. It's super high quality stuff. So I'm glad that we've been able to do that and find the right vendors and production and distribution, all that kind of stuff. So our new heritage line is kind of emulates what I just said.
Awesome. All right, here's a question from Michael. It says, "Hey Steve, chess is really starting to explode on Twitch. Have you considered signing any professional chess streamers? You and Victor are amazing. Keep up the great work." How do you feel about Team Liquid Chess?
So I used to play chess competitively when I was super young, and I'm a
Hmm.
big chess fan. And we've actually done some content in the past with chess players and the parallels between esports and chess, specifically with regards to how chess players train, which is super interesting. And that's a whole other topic. But yeah, and we've seen the interest recently on Twitch, and we're looking around.
All
So
right.
we're kind of aware what's going on, but nothing beyond
All right.
that.
I know you mentioned Valorant earlier. I know that's the sort of the big new game that's been popping up as an esport. Are you looking at any other games besides Valorant to add to the ever-growing Hydra that is Team Liquid?
Yeah, we're always contemplating new titles that we should participate in. I think part of that is like analyzing what's happening within the community or the developers or a new game title that may be coming out or announcements, and uh, we do our best in running that analysis. I it's I'm just I know I'm good, kind of dodging the question, but yes, the short answer is yeah, we got some other stuff cooking, but I can't really talk to what it is.
That's totally understandable. I appreciate you being honest with that. This is going to be another question from John. I think this is probably going to be the last question of the day. With the franchising of the LCS and move to a best of one system, do you think that there's a loss of competition within the region in LCS due to the fact there are no longer challenger teams vying for slots and teams no longer playing best of threes?
Hmm. Yeah, I do think that the lack of okay, so there's a couple things within that.
Hmm.
The overarching theme of the question has to do with the competitiveness of North America as a region in comparison to the other regions in the world. And I think um, at least the lack of competitiveness to date, which is just obvious by our results as a region, um, are not because of a single thing.
Hmm.
I think it's a multifaceted a problem. I
Hmm.
think one of those problems has to do with the size of the North American server and the number of players that are playing on it in comparison to other regions. And when you have more players that are participating on a server, there's just higher likelihood that there's more players to compete. And so that makes it difficult. So that's number one. Number two, I think that the players not competing in a best of three series definitely less games, less practice, and then also create some tentativeness in being able to explore different types of play styles. There's a greater emphasis on every win matters, right?
Hmm.
And so less flexibility there, which I agree with. Um, I would also say that um, there are some. Uh, Not every team has invested into the type of infrastructure in order for the players to be optimizing the level in the I'm sorry, optimizing the rate at which they're learning,
Hmm.
which is just like an important responsibility of an organization within the LCS um, is to provide that structure,
Hmm.
right? Coaches and analysts and conditions and facilities and you know work from home, play from home, everything that goes into that. And I think when not all organizations are doing that, and you only have a handful, then yeah, it's tough, right? From a region perspective,
Hmm.
for that region to be as competitive with other regions in the world that infrastructure is across more teams. Just leave it that way.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think all these things are the case, but within all of that, sometimes you just need one team, right?
Yeah.
So, you could do all these things to increase the likelihood, which is a fair argument, but at the same time, it doesn't make it impossible. And and we've seen a few glimmers of that, right? With both Cloud9's performance as well as our performance, at least at MSI.
Hmm.
Um, it can happen, and I think it's dependent on a lot of things, but it is possible, irrespective of the disadvantages that we may have as a region.
Yeah. Okay, so that's just about the time. I again want to thank Steve for coming out here and making this entire thing possible. Before we go, I want to shout out that our club, our gaming club PlayMU, is doing a Black Lives Matter charity fundraiser stream for 24 hours starting on Friday and ending on Saturday. That's going to benefit the Bail Project. You can go ahead and follow us over at twitch.tv/PlayMU in order to come in and join us for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then besides that, we are PlayMU as a club are SteelSeries ambassadors. If you go to steelseries.com and use the code PlayMU10, you get 10% off on your order. And then also, our club gets a 5% kickback to hopefully fund our esports teams, buy jerseys, and also just give back to our club. Steve, is there anything you want to shout out before we go?
Yeah, just thank you so much for having me on this and organizing, and it's awesome to just chat with all the current students here at James Madison University, which is where I spend a lot of time. So it's great to be connected again, and appreciate all the organization to put this in place. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. That's going to do it for us on behalf of PlayMU and on behalf of Team Liquid. Have a great night, guys. Bye.